Hi, it's your NoBox co-creators here. This is Marthea.
This is Yejin. Thanks for listening to our podcast. We are beginning to prepare for season 2. Please subscribe to Dance Behind the Screen, and if you're listening in Apple Podcast, give us a 5-star rating and leave your comments in a review.
We have some really exciting announcements for NoBox. We are now accepting submissions for the first annual NoBox Dance Film Festival, NBFF for short. This is an international dance film festival that will premiere in Dallas, Texas, in the United States, and Puebla, Mexico, followed by an international spring tour.
We're creating a festival of dance films that deconstruct the body and experiment with elements within a specific site to challenge the possibilities of what dance can look like in video form.
Submit your film, and if your film is selected as the NBFF #attention grabber, you are guaranteed an interview on this Dance Behind the Screen podcast. We hope we can interview you.
Yeah, the early bird deadline is September 30th. The fee is $15. The regular deadline is October 31st. The fee is $25.
If you want to submit your film, which we hope you do, you can click the link in our show notes or visit noboxdance.com. and search Film Festival, or look us up on Film Freeway, KNOWBOX Dance Film Festival. If you see a neon green play button as the logo, you're in the right place.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
You thinking about social media and dance and like that question before? One of the crazy things, and this is because I have kids, is do you know that there's this online game called Fortnite, and that these dances, are like a huge part of that. And so you have all these kids, all these 5th graders all over the planet who are like wanting to spend money to purchase these new dances that their avatars on Fortnite are doing. And it's totally crazy. Like my son is learning dances from this game and is dancing in this video game. So, but that is a field of social media. So it's kind of this whole gaming world. But to think that would be a place where people are learning about dance is really kind of cool.
NoBox Dance presents Dance Behind the Screen, process production and social media. Hey knowers, welcome to our podcast. We are NoBox Dance, a social media-based company. We strive to say no to the box. We connect interdisciplinary art, technology, and artists to re-envision the process of art making and sharing.
Hello, everyone. It's Marthea.
And hello, everyone. It's Reina, your host of today's episode of Dance Behind the Screen podcast. We are currently at Texas Women's University in Denton, Texas, in the office of Jordan Fuchs.
His choreography has been hailed as magical by Jennifer Dunning of the New York Times and noted for redefining chaos and for creating illusions of delicate complexity by Deborah Jowett of The Village Voice. Jordan Fuchs is a choreographer, performer, and teacher. His choreography is grounded in improvisational practice, specifically the bias towards disorientation, sensation, and process of contact improvisation. A movement form he has been practicing for more than 25 years. He utilizes the aesthetic values of improvisation to find the instability of each performance moment, the possibility of transformation through sensation, and the inherent state of moving always in relationship to another and to our environment. The Texas Dance Improvisation Festival was initially conceived by Jordan Fuchs with the mission to share, inspire, and challenge the improvisational dance community of Texas. TDIF for short was first co-hosted at TWU in 2009 by Jordan Fuchs and Sarah Gamblin. Since that first year, TDIF has grown to include over 200 participants a year, including students, professors, and professional dance artists from across Texas, the United States, and as far away as Germany and Taiwan. Without further ado, welcome to our podcast, Jordan.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Reina. Great to be here.
So, Jordan, how would you briefly describe your career?
Okay. briefly describe my career. I got started in dance in college. It was the first time I was exposed to modern dance, so I loved it, and I started making dances and doing a lot of contact improvisation right away. But I wasn't sure if I could make a living at it or how you do it outside of school. So my big thing was, I love this, but can I keep doing this after I graduate? So I went to San Francisco after I graduated, and it was there that I started figuring out how to, work day jobs to support my dance habits and support, producing work and making my own choreography. And then gradually over a number of years, was able to put together an evening length show, concert, and started a company there, that time called the Jordan Fuchs Dance Repair Company, because I wanted to kind of repair the relationship of dance to society and have it be less of a stepchild to the arts and more in front and center. But then after that, I was there for a while. I was like, this is good. But because I got started so late, I didn't really feel like I felt like I needed to have a stronger base in the form. So I went back to graduate school at Ohio State University. And then after that, I felt like, okay, now I'm ready for New York City. And then was in New York for 10 years and had a company there and was teaching at various places, Hunter College, movement research, and started getting commissions. Then my wife had a child, and New York starts getting super expensive at that point. So my goal had always been to go into teaching at a university. So at that point, it seemed ready for that after being there for 10 years. And now I've been here in Texas for 12 years. Yeah.
So you've been here in Texas for 12 years. Yeah. Could you tell us about why you started TDIS?
Yeah. It came pretty early on. I'd seen the models of other festivals, like Movement Research has Melt, and they used to have this movement, or they still do have this improvisational dance festival in the fall. And I just had these models of other places. But when you're in a place like New York, there's so much infrastructure already set up and so much set up that there's little need sometimes for somebody else to set something up new. But when I came here, I had an experience of going to the American College Dance Festival for the first time in a long time after not having, and there are a lot of really positive things about that, but there were also some things I didn't appreciate, like just how you're not able to interact with the adjudicators, and there's kind of this separation between those who are visiting and those who are there, and there was just so much structure, and it just seemed like such a huge structural thing to pull off. So I said, there are a lot of pluses of this, but there are a lot of minuses too. And I was interested in also just aesthetically, it didn't really address improvisational dance or more experimental forms in the way I was interested in. So through attending that, I was able to make connections with a bunch of different artists and who working in universities from across the state. And just from that conversation, developed this idea of trying to create a festival because we're all of these dance artists who are connected to universities here. We have access to these great resources, which is usually the toughest choice or the toughest aspect of it. Like, how do I get space to pull off this festival? Well, you're teaching in a university, there's space available. So really this idea of leveraging these resources we have access to create connections with other artists and to offer different aesthetic visions here in Texas than what you would find at ACDA, more experimental, and to open the space also for bringing artists internationally and national artists here to Texas that otherwise wouldn't come, and most likely wouldn't be on the radar of a place like ACDA. So it was really wanting to create more of an alternative, improvisational based aesthetic world and give people here the experience of what it is to be at a improvisationally centric festival as opposed to more conventional, more traditional dance forms.
Jordan, could you talk more about this idea of, what defines the culture of improvisation that is notably different from the culture of perhaps ACDA or some of those already established conferences?
Yeah, one thing that's not really so much of a concern for us is just the whole idea of competition. Like there is this competitive element at these college dance festivals to select the best works to go to this national festival. And I understand it. It's great for departments to say our work was selected for this festival, and we're being presented to the best, now the best of the country, because that makes sense to the rest of the administration on campus. But there's so much energy spent towards that and to keeping the adjudicators objective that it just wastes all this opportunity to engage and dance with and learn from these people, these guest artists and the like. So So part of it was wanting more of a space for exchange and for interplay between the nice thing for me about contact improvisation is you have people who have been doing it for a long time dancing with newcomers. And that's one of the aesthetic values of the form. If you're good at it, you should be able to dance with anybody, and wanting to create a space much more just for meeting people and for dancing for people and for not feeling so isolated. Because the other thing about moving here from New York is, in New York, it's just like connections all over the place. And, there's everything there. But here in Texas, particularly for many dance artists who have moved here from other places like New York or the West Coast, we're a little bit isolated. So part of the festival, too, was to make connections with other artists with similar aesthetic interests who are here. But I think just really creating a space with less hierarchy and more opportunities for more perspectives to be shared.
Mm-hmm. And for our audience who doesn't know, how do you think Texas Dance Improvisation Festival offers the opportunity for exchange and interplay for those who don't know the format?
Sure. It's so this last year was the 10th one, and it's basically 2.5 days. It starts on a Thursday and goes through the end of the day on Saturday. And it starts with an opening jam, kind of based on contact improvisation formats. And so people are coming together and they're in a space and maybe there's music or maybe there's not, and they're sharing contact improvisational practices or ensemble improvisational practices, but everybody's in the room together and we're dancing together, literally. And then the next day, there's a series of rounds of various classes offered by different artists from throughout Texas, certainly, but also now the whole country. So it's an opportunity to take classes. And then in the evening, there's another jam on Friday. And then Saturday, again, there's classes during the day. And then there's a performance, an improvisationally focused, centric performance on Saturday night in which, you get to see people who have been practicing improvisation a long time perform. And that's the focus of the event. And then following that, there's another jam. So, and there's long times for breaks for lunches and for meals. So it's just it's really easy to meet somebody in a jam or in a class and then have time to talk with them outside of that. And more the formats we're trying to open up the formats to, not just class formats or workshops, but also, focused on a topic. If people want to talk about like consent issues in dance, some Megan Yankee was offering a talk on that this year. So, depending on what people's interests are, trying to make that as inclusive as possible.
You are listening to Navox Dance.
And I know as a person who's attended the festival a few times, I think it definitely is serving its purpose that you're talking about. From my own experience, it's rather quite exciting. But I kind of want to take a few steps back. So I did some research, and you wrote about the first TDIF in Contact Quarterly, which is a publication. And it was in the summer 2010 volume, so about a year after the festival got started. And you said, the festival was a great success with many wonderful memories, images, insights, new friends and colleagues, as well as an expanded and strengthened community of improvisers. There's a good momentum for repeating the festival next year in the fall of 2010. I think our optimism is calling it the first annual Dance Improvisation Festival was warranted. So how has this festival really evolved from its opening in 2009, now that was about, 10 years ago?
Yeah. How has it evolved? I think it just keeps getting better and better through practice and through figuring things out. I know for myself, like a lot of the models I've used for the festival are from other festivals I've been to, like the West Coast Contact Intensive Jam that happens in Berkeley every summer. This past year, the Freiburg International Contact Festival in Freiburg, Germany. I know Sarah Gamblin, is also very much connected to Spotty up in Seattle as well. So we've been looking at structures that are used in other festivals to see what works in our festival. I mean, very specifically, the first thing that comes to mind is just this idea of having like a morning jam session. Like we didn't used to offer that, and that was a new element, and that was taken from the West Coast Contact Jam. Just that we'd have a jam in the morning, so totally different energy than at night. The other thing is reducing the number of slots we had. We used to have like 3 or 4, so people were like dying, trying to get through everything. So we'd kind of finding this better balance of daily, how many events do we need to happen? Another great structure was this thing, and maybe you can help me remember the name of it, but we have this part of the performance is the thing where there's a secret curatorial committee. So that these people are going around and just looking for interesting dancers who who certainly aren't performing otherwise, but also maybe, this is their first year at the festival. Maybe they don't really know people, but it's a way of those curators finding those people and saying, hey, are you interested in performing on Saturday night, not knowing who you're going to perform with or for how long? And people are generous and they're willing, and they come and then they perform. And it's this wonderful improvisational moment. So again, that's like a structure that we found somewhere else. And we're like, hey, this is a cool idea. Let's try this. So this idea of best practices, and the idea that many of the people who the advisory committee for the festival are out there at these other festivals and learning from them as well. The philosophy of the festival is to not develop too much, because one of the real values of the festival was this idea of sustainability. And many of us who are producing the festival and who host the festival each year, it goes to a different university each year. So there's a new host. We have full-time jobs as well already. So one of the real values of the festival was to keep it sustainable and not administrative heavy. So in some ways, one of the things we've had to do is just remember that that's our focus, and to not try and build it so much so that it stays kind of small. I mean, we found that like this year there was like 250 people, and that's really kind of a nice sweet spot each year. I mean, one way it's evolved from the beginning is that we used to not charge anything at all. It used to be free for all this. Then eventually we added $10. No, I think eventually we just started having people register online so we could keep track, and then we connected money to that. And this past year was at $10 or $15. So starting to charge a little bit, just realizing how much value there is in it for people. So that's been one development. But mainly, the other thing that's been interesting about it over the time is it's really people focused in terms of who is interested in helping the festival be accomplished. And it's really about those connections and that network. So 10 years ago, the network was a little bit different. There were some people like based in Houston and the like who were really interested in contact. And then they've kind of shifted out from that. So as they shift out, we kind of lose that connection potentially to that university.
Right.
But it's been interesting. We're almost at the second generation of people who have been involved now. So some of my earlier students from 10 years ago are now, teaching at universities and connected at universities. So they're interested in hosting, and they're now serving on the advisory committee for the festival. So that generational shift has been another development. And then in terms of social media, certainly this past year with the involvement of Erica Record, who's really interested in marketing and social media. I mean, last year was the first year we had a website.
Right.
Prior to that, it had just all been done through Facebook, all the administrative tasking and all the marketing for it. So we've started, at least in terms of social media and web presence, to be more structured, more concrete in that sense.
Don't forget to say no to the box.
Jordan, do you see a correlation between the evolution and accessibility of the digital space and the growth of TDIF?
Both in terms of finding people who want to come to the festival, but also in organizing the festival too. We started off with email, between the advisory committee members to organize it. But over time, it's shifted to like a Facebook platform. So the advisory committee meets in space. We actually, only time we ever come face to face is we have one meeting a year at the festival. So all of this organization, it's just like one of those private groups on Facebook, and it's super useful and just enables all this interaction and organization and marketing to happen. So without Facebook, I don't know if we would have the festival. It would have been too hard, too slow to reach people.
Yeah, and that's exciting to hear, especially as us venturing in to talking to people about the influence of the digital space. It's exciting to hear the positive outcomes of the freeness
definitely.
of social media. Could you talk about the coordinating committee? I know you mentioned you're kind of entering this second generation of who's on that perhaps coordinating committee, but could you talk about what's the process for deciding who the guest artists are and the selection process for classes and performances, especially for those of our audience who might want to apply and get more involved?
No, definitely. The process now is that we put out a call in the spring through social media like Facebook and with
you
Erica.
have an Instagram now too.
Yeah. Erica set up Instagram as well, and then also through the website. And then the advisory committee is comprised of either people who have formally hosted the festival or who are interested in hosting the festival. Last year it was about 14 people, primarily from Texas. But what else? So 14 people, primarily from Texas. There's a kind of a head coordinator who just keeps things rolling along. And I did that role for the first 10 years. And now Sarah Gamblin took on that role this year and is initiating that. So that group of individuals is really helpful also in spreading the word about the festival. And when it gets time to curating who's going to teach or who's going to perform, we form two kind of subcommittees, one for teaching proposals and one for performance proposals. And then each of those subcommittees will go through the proposals and applications and, be like, this folk, seems good. Or I know them. I've seen them. Or, wow, I don't know this person, but this sounds really interesting. We haven't had this before. Let's do this. So it's done by subgroups, and then they bring it back for the full committee if there's anybody has any questions about things. The nice thing is with 14 individuals, everybody kind of knows a lot, or everybody knows a lot of people. So if you don't know someone, you can ask or inquire about. So that's how it's done. And we also just have a bias on wanting to incorporate people who haven't performed before, haven't taught here before. Again, encouraging new perspectives in terms of what improvisational dance can be.
So would you say what you're looking for most is, new perspectives, I guess, or?
Yeah, we're looking for new perspectives, but we're also looking for coherent perspectives. So a lot of that just has to do with the proposal process. It's like a one-page thing, but just, being clear about what it is you want to do and so that particularly if we don't know you, we can, know what it is you want to do and select you. So, yeah.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
So for those of you who want to apply, that's what you're looking for. Now you have the secret sauce.
Definitely.
You are listening to Navvox Dance.
So as you guys get together with the committee, Jordan, and y'all look at all of the guest artist possibility, do you consider any of the artists' social media presence at all when selecting the guest artists?
Let's see. I should also say there's like two kind of levels of artists that we select for the festival. So one is the guest artist, and that's usually somebody of national or international stature who's brought in. Like we go out, invite them, and they're getting paid a certain amount. The host institution pays them, but that's somebody that the committee decides on each year. Like we put a list together and we kind of vote on who, and then we see who's available, who's interested. So that selection happens first. And then later when the call goes out for additional teachers and for performers, that's another round of guest artists. So
there are different processes.
Yeah, different processes. Thank you.
We too have noticed quite a dramatic shift in the marketing and the branding. I'm not sure if that's how you guys want to frame it, but of TDIF over the course of the past year on both social media and the development of the website. And I know there's like the email newsletter that you can sign up for as well. And like you mentioned, we know Erica Record, she's kind of the festival administrator role. But what was this rebranding process like? And has this positively affected the attendance and participation of TDIF?
Yeah, no, first of all, just to say it's most definitely positively affected the participation. One of the things that I so appreciate about Erica as administrator and kind of web guru and social media guru, and also having somebody in that role is her ability to engage with people through social media. Because I know without Erica there's just so many things and tasks that have to be accomplished to pull off the festival that often the idea of responding to people individually on Facebook or Instagram gets really challenging. So I think the biggest thing is just that Erica, we now have someone who is there in that role and is really good at it. So it's able, people have questions, they have ideas, just developing more interest, putting out posts on a regular basis because and it might be a generational difference too, because Erica's a
millennial.
yeah, thank you. So,
let's go millennials.
Yeah, so more savvy with media. A lot of this media stuff's a little bit newer for me. So we're with Erica. She's more within that world, so she's able to utilize it more effectively than I am. And in terms of the marketing process, I can't say that it was really intentionally developed that way. I think it happened because Nina Martin, who hosts the festival at TCU 2 years ago, brought in Erica to help administer the festival there. And I think so it was partially Nina, bringing her into that role that clarified that. And then once Nina used that way, we were like, that works really well, and let's keep working with Erica in this way. So then it's become established.
I want to talk more about your experience as a choreographer and an educator. So Raina and I are both have been students of Jordan. I don't know if we mentioned that yet. But as a former student of yours, I recall you always speaking to the importance of staying current and very aware of the dance field and the world in which we live. And we would always have to find in class and share with the class some form of dance-related news. And I think that's been really useful for me. But could you talk to us about why you think it's important to stay current of the dance field in the world? And then also, how do you stay aware of the dance field in the world? I realize it's kind of heavy question, big question.
Yeah. Well, I just think because a lot of the students here, because Texas Women's University is based in northern Texas, so a lot of the students here are from this region, and in some cases haven't had experiences of the dance world outside of Texas or this region. So that's one of the reasons I find it super important. Is just so that to encourage people to just understand that the dance world is bigger than this region, and to find ways to connect to that, because there is certainly moving here from New York City a little bit, it's geographically isolating a little bit in terms of, what is happening in the dance realm at this moment in New York or LA or London or, or wherever. So I think living here, we have to make more of an effort to reach out and find out what's going on so that, we don't think the only thing that's going on is what we're seeing here. So I really stress that a lot because it's also important value for me as a choreographer is still making work and wanting to stay relevant and current and wanting to know what's going on. So in that sense, I'm asking my students to do the same, work that I like to do as well and think's important. In terms of how to do that,
could you recommend to our listeners how you do this?
Well, one thing, and it does involve a flight on a plane, but I know you yourself, Martha, have done this a couple of years now, is just the idea that in New York City in January every year, there's this APAP conference that happens, which is this Association of Performing Arts Presenters. So all these presenters from all over the country and internationally are meeting in New York. And consequently, all of these choreographers and dance companies, nationally New York based and internationally, all meet in New York. And for the first 2 to 3 weeks of January, there's just a ton of performance going on in New York of all different kinds of, primarily dance, but theater, experimental theater, music and the like. So every year I like to, as often as I can, go to New York during that time, even if it's just for a few days, and just, for 3 or 4 days, just see like 4 shows, 5 performances a day, whatever it is, just to, it's a good way to go and just kind of get a snapshot of what happened in the past year in New York, or what is happening in the dance field. So I realize that's a little different than being able to look at it on the web or something, but for not living there, I find it's really useful to gain a perspective of what is going on, at least in one area. So that's one resource. Besides that, I could just, talk about boring resources like newspapers and stuff.
List them out. List them out for our audience.
Everybody wants to know.
Everybody wants to know about the Denton Record Chronicle. So we start local. I believe in local papers. I believe in seeing what's getting written about, what isn't, what is happening in the area. So I read that every day. The New York Times I love online, so I'm always reading that.
There's a discount for students and for educators, for those of you listening.
The British Guardian I love as well. It's another online one. Magazines like The New Yorker for, dance, for all sorts of cultural things. Podcasts like this one that I listen to now, but also like WTF by Mark Maron, just, interviewing artists and getting a sense, hearing artists, a lot of actors and comedians and stuff, but still hearing how they talk about their work and, getting ideas. So for me, it's all of these resources and just a lot of reading as part of the everyday.
So as your student and a member of your company as well, we often work with video and rehearsal process and communicate via Facebook groups, but we also know that you create dance films. Can you share with our audience how you use the digital space in your creative process for both live performances and dance films?
Now, schedule-wise, I can usually only rehearse once a week, for about, so one long rehearsal a week. So I use these Facebook group pages as ways to communicate what has been happening in rehearsal to the dancers in the rehearsal, but also to other collaborators, composers, lighting designers, and the like. So each week, each rehearsal, I'll come out of there with various rehearsal video footage and then excerpt from that and then post a weekly recap of what we did in rehearsal. So that way it becomes a resource for the dancers to look at if they have a question about something, but it also becomes kind of a documentation of the creative process for me. So
a real archive of what's going on.
So about like halfway through the process, when I start wanting to collect things and start putting them into form rather than just research things, then I can go back and look at, this video footage and start excerpting from that. So I love Vimeo. In particular, for just being able to organize all that, Vimeo and Facebook. And then, but I also just really like the idea of making my creative process inclusive for the dancers in the process. So, the fact that they're able to see footage and reference footage as things are going along, I think is really helpful. And that's very much true, particularly this year in the video dance projects I'm working on, because I'm working on a couple projects simultaneously, but really starting to from a place of, or an earlier place in the creative process than is typically the case. So really having to conceptualize what the projects are going to be with the performers I'm working with in the video dances. So the Facebook group pages for that, in addition to sharing the video footage, has also been a place to share like my notes about what I'm thinking about the video footage with the performers as a way to just help them understand aesthetically, or, maybe it prompts some thoughts in them. But so I love the Facebook group pages for just this ability to integrate performers into creative process and just to document, to archive. And it's wonderful.
Don't forget to say no to the box.
You were an advisor for the graduate assistantships, both the digital media coordinator and publicity coordinator. And so you really oversee the curation of all print and digital marketing materials for the TW Dance Department. And we're just kind of curious, can you articulate important values to have when overseeing the curation of this content?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I can't take, I would say I'm partially responsible because also the chair here, Mary Wilford Shade, this also reflects her aesthetic values as well. So it's not just me, but with print materials, let's see. It's just trying to find images that are engaging for whoever the intended audience is, their season postcards or something that's going to grab people's attention. That's certainly a value.
How would you define that? In grabbing someone's attention. Could you describe that to our audience? I can describe it.
For me, it's a little bit different than Mary's aesthetic. Yeah. So there's some kind of interplay there. I mean, for me, it's really about proximity to the camera to the dancing. I like to bring audiences and my print imagery into the dancing as close because I think there's enough images of people, of full body images from a distance that you would see like in a proscenium stage. And I really like this idea maybe from contact improvisation and this basis in sensation and wanting really concrete feedback of, no, I don't want to just see it. I want to feel it. Like the kinesthetic, images create kinesthetic empathy. And so for my own aesthetic, I'm more interested in that. Mary has a different vision, and she's also aware of, what our various audiences are. And some people have had a lot of experience with dance and some people aren't, so if you use something that's too close to the camera or something, be like, what is that? Or what kind of dance is that? So it's about negotiating your audience a little bit with that.
So what do you think has shifted in terms of your role as the faculty advisor for these graduate assistantships because the influence of social media?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just that we do much less print media than we used to. It's really shifting. I mean, even Facebook now is just, that's kind of old, and it's really Instagram. And sometimes we've tried Snapchat, but not consistently, but more so Instagram is where at least our students are engaged with, where I think Facebook's not the case as much. But we used to do a lot more postcards and season postcards and all that stuff. And it's just going away because social media, Instagram, Facebook are so much more effective and cheaper.
So as we wrap up, we have our flash forward portion where we ask all our guests to answer 4 questions in a flash.
Flash forward.
First question. If you had to recommend a resource to our audience, what would it be? Would it be a book, podcast?
It would be a website for On the Boards TV. They're based in Seattle. They're a presenter in Seattle. And you have to pay to rent, but it's just a great resource to be able to watch the video of a lot of current contemporary artists. And they put a great collection of artists and work there. So that's a great resource, a way to learn a lot about people you may not know of.
Nice.
I love it. Yeah.
Okay. Question number 2. What was the first dance you saw?
Yeah. First modern dance I saw was Alison Salzinger. And this is probably, I won't say the year. It was in the 80s.
Come on.
But probably 86, 87.
That's not too far back.
No, but it was oversized men's shoes and clashing plaid men's shorts. And I'd never seen modern dance before, so it blew me away. And that's why I became a dancer from her work, just seeing physical virtuosity and this kind of creative expression. I'd never seen it before in my life, so it totally knocked my world.
That's nice.
Thank you to her.
Let's go. Right, question number 3. Do you think social media has a positive influence on the dance world? Yes or no?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Yeah.
Care to elaborate?
Yeah, quickly, sure. Easing geographic isolation, wonderful. But and this ability to organize in smaller groups and create collaborative projects. But I'm also really ambivalent, and I don't know if it's my age group or whatever, but just the idea of having to have this active presence online and how much to publicize of oneself. And so there's a lot of that, and I'm a little bit ambivalent about in terms of private person versus public person. And so there's some things about the additional action of having to have a presence online that I'm still kind of ambivalent about myself.
Okay. Question number 4. What is your favorite social media platform? Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I'm going to expand Is Spotify a social media? I mean, they have the options
It's a
for
medium.
social.
Yeah, there's
You can connect to people
that's
socially
true.
through
Yeah,
that. So
yeah.
so Spotify is. I've been loving Spotify recently.
We just want to say, as we wrap up, thank you, Jordan, so much for your time and having us in your office, and two, just for sharing your thoughts about all the different roles that you play. It's been interesting to learn about the process of the Texas Dance Improvisation Festival, your creative process, and two, what it's like to curate content at a university. So thank you. We hope our audience will find some value in all of that information you shared. But before we leave, could you please share with our listeners your social media handles and your website so that they can stay connected with you and TDIF?
Sure. Yeah. So TDIF is tdif.dance. And so that's easy to find. My own website is jordanfuchs.org. Facebook, Jordan Fuchs on Facebook, and JFuchs11, I think, on Instagram. Again, still new to Instagram. So those are my handles. But can I just say one other thing, though?
Of course.
Yeah. Just thinking about social media and dance and like that question before. One of the crazy things, and this is because I have kids, is do you know that there's this online game called Fortnite, and that these dances, are like a huge part of that. And so you have all these kids, all these fifth graders all over the planet who are like wanting to spend money to purchase these new dances that their avatars on Fortnite are doing. And it's totally crazy. Like my son is learning dances from this game and is dancing and this video game. So, but that is a field of social media. So it's kind of this whole gaming world. But to think that would be a place where people are learning about dance is really kind of cool. So that was one I forgot to mention earlier. But yeah, it's pretty astounding to me. So all these new realms opening up all the time.
So for the gamers listening, please check that out.
Well, Jordan, that's a very interesting point to look at the gaming industry too, as social media. I know I've seen all like the YouTube videos of people doing those Fortnite dances, but I haven't thought of it as a way to learn dance too.
No,
this might be their first access.
All the kids know it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
That sparks a really interesting point. And I think that's a great note for us all to end on. So thanks again, Jordan, so much for your time. And we will link all of Jordan's recommendations and his website and the like in our show notes. So thank you.
Thank you, Jordan.
Yeah, thank you too, both so much. It's great.
Thanks for taking your time to tune in to Dance Behind the Screen, a bi-monthly interview series where we go behind the screen to question process, product, and social media. Be sure to follow us on social media at KNOW Box Dance. See you next time, and don't forget to say no to the box.